Thanks, John. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Simon Gustafson, and I'm an alcoholic. Um, I am from Mesa, Arizona, as John said, um, and my sobriety date is October 29th, 2020. So I'm a fairly new member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing. I say that because I've been to Alcoholics Anonymous before, um, and ended up making my way back here, and that'll be part of what I talk about here tonight. But my story is uh, kind of unremarkable to me, but it's my story. You know, I for a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought my story was such a story that I couldn't be an alcoholic. Um, and because I heard other people's stories, and as we hear in the rooms a lot of times, look for similarities instead of differences. And when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous the first time, I looked at all the differences, and that eventually led me to leave the rooms for a period of time. But a little about me. I'm 51 years old, and I grew up in a family. My parents are not alcoholics. My mother has never had alcohol in any form. My father maybe tasted a beer here or there, but never drank. I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. I was raised in a Mormon family. I don't know if any of you know about being from Texas and know much about the Mormon culture, but um, we're not supposed to drink in that culture, and so I'm living proof that Mormons can be definitely be alcoholics. Um, I have I didn't take my first drink until I was about 18 years old. Uh, I remember it vividly. That's one of the things that my sponsor asked me about early on. He asked me, to describe my first time drinking, and it was remarkable how clearly I could remember that because of the impact that it made on me. I remember it was a friend of mine, and me and him were sitting at his house. His dad had about 8 beers in the fridge. I asked my friend if I could drink his dad's beers. His dad was out of town. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Is that enough to get me drunk?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Are you going to have any?" He said, "I wasn't planning on it." And I said, "Well, I want to drink all 8." And I drank all 8. And it was a pretty significant event in my life, because like a lot of alcoholics, uh, I could I could immediately feel like this great gasping sigh of relief, like, wow, this is good stuff. This is I immediately could I drank those beers. We went out to a couple of spots that we hung out at in high school, and immediately I could talk to people that I couldn't that I wouldn't have talked to before. um, I ended up cutting my finger pretty good that night, but it was the one thing that I could tell you from that experience was, man, I am going to do this again. I am definitely going to do this again. And, that was when I was 18 years old. And uh, over the coming months, that was in the winter of my senior year of high school. And over the next few months, I ended up drinking on a number of different occasions when the opportunity presented myself. But like any good Mormon boy, when I turned 19, I was expected to go on a church mission, and so when I was 19 years old, I ended up. 4 minutes, 51.8. I'm sorry about that. I ended up going going on a mission for my church for 2 years. So I was one of those gentlemen who used to ride around on, you probably have all seen them riding around in those little white shirts with little name tags on, and I did that for 2 years. So I was out there teaching people about the Mormon church, and I didn't drink during that time, and that's kind of the arc of my story is that there was always periods of time where I wouldn't drink, and that was a period of time. I got off my mission, I came back home, lived at home for a couple of years with my parents. I actually served my mission here in Arizona, and when my brother got back from his mission, we both moved down to Arizona together, and you know, I was out of the house, living on my own with my brother, and you know, we would drink periodically, but nothing serious. And I ended up getting married when I was 26 years old. I wasn't active in my religion. I was, and I ended up marrying a girl who was not a LDS. We didn't attend church during that period of time, and ended up having 3 kids. We have three kids together right now. Still married to the same woman, but for a period of time in my life, I was a long haul truck driver. I did that for quite a few years. Didn't drink a lot during that time, but did drink occasionally. And then I had my some health care concerns with my oldest son, and ended up coming back home and coming to work in a family business where I still work at today, and ended up getting back active in the Mormon church. My wife was subsequently joined the church, was baptized, and I didn't drink during a lot of that time until I was about 38 years old. And at 38 years old, I kind of had a crisis of faith in my. 2 things happened. I had a crisis of faith in my religion. Wasn't really buying what they were selling anymore. Had a lot of questions about that kind of stuff, and I had a serious back injury. And during that time, I herniated a couple discs in my back, and was given painkillers at that time, and boy, wow, that was life-changing again, and another life-changing event for me. You know, here, you know, I'm trying to work religion. I'm trying to get, you know, I'm trying to make God this part of my life, because I've always been kind of a seeker. I've always have had a spiritual bent, you know, and I've had some deep spiritual experiences, but that nothing would ever stick. You know, I'd get some relief for a period of time, but always that same gnawing feeling, you know, that I've learned since I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, that something's just not right, you know, that something's just not right. And when I started taking those painkillers when I was 38 years old, I thought, wow, this is great. But I guess my nature is I have a nature that I'm very risk averse in many ways, and I've had some friends that had issues with painkillers, and I didn't want to have those same issues, and so the thought popped into my mind, well, I can drink, you know, that's not going to cause a problem, because I didn't have any idea about alcoholism. I never experienced it in my family. I don't know any alcoholics in my family. I have, like I said, my parents don't drink. I don't have any aunts and uncles who are alcoholic. I look back in my family tree, and I don't know of any alcoholics in my family, and I just had no idea. I thought that was the easier, softer way, or the better alternative, and right around 38 years old, I started to drink in earnest. And my wife was, she was okay with that. She had joined the Mormon church because she wasn't raised in a household that had any religious slant. So when I told her I didn't want to go to the Mormon church anymore, and I was going to do this, I think she was relieved. Quite honestly, she was okay with that. So at about 38 years old, I started drinking a lot more regularly, and fairly early on, I'd say within the first 2 or 3 years, that I could see that, yeah, there was, the people that I was drawn to, the people that I would like to go out and drink with, were not normal drinkers. Part of my story is, though I wasn't raised in an alcoholic household, I'm an alcoholic. I've come to grips with that, and there's a couple of my other siblings that, though they're not in this program, I know one of them would admit that they're alcoholic, and I suspect the other one definitely has that possibility. So even though it's not in my family, I can't see it from previous generations. It's in my family, and and uh, and so I didn't have uh, a lot of dire consequences. Even but I started to began to start questioning my drinking, because and there was a lot of times where, during that stretch between the time I was 38 to the time I was 50, I could always get periods of sobriety together, and but what I noticed was that was starting to get harder and harder to put time together, and probably in the jumping forward to about 2017, I started questioning a lot of what I was doing, and my story is pretty simple. It's not, there's not a lot of other outside issues. I didn't have, a lot of other drug problems other than the painkillers early on, but I never sought those out after the fact. But alcohol was definitely a major part of my life. The one thing I could tell is that during those periods of sobriety, I was, something was still missing. Something was still missing in my life. I was bored. One of the things that I always had a hard time with the description restless, of irritable, and discontent. I was talking to my sponsor one day, and he said, to me, that was just being bored. And I thought, yeah, I agree with that. Alcohol made everything more interesting to me. It made food taste better. It made movies more enjoyable. Watching TV became something that was just, and then certainly in the social aspect, going out and meeting people and having a few pops and being in that environment, I was able to talk and express myself and philosophize and, try to solve the world's problems, as a lot of drunks, like tend to do, and I'd have these meaningful conversations with my brothers and my brother-in-law who run this business with me, and we'd make all these grand plans while we were drinking about how, things were going to change at work, and, the next week at work, nothing would change. That's just all the, all the bull crap that we kind of, that we would do, and anyways, jump forward to about 2017. I could tell I was having a hard time staying sober. Knew that there was a problem, and I decided to, I started reading some sobriety stuff on the internet, looking at different internet sites. Are you a problem drinker? You know, that type, the questions that we ask, that they ask ourselves. And, you know, I was obviously concerned enough to start looking into some things, and found some podcasts. One of the podcasts I found back in 2017 was a podcast by the name of Sober Speak, and I heard some really great content on there, and you know, it helped me put a few months of sobriety together at that time, and I was listening to some stuff, and I thought, yeah, this is working for me, but you know, life happens, and you know that I missed drinking, you know, and ended up picking up again, and in about a year and a half later, had an incident in Palm Springs, California, on a vacation, and experienced a blackout for the first time. And I know a lot of people say they're blackout drinkers from the very first time they ever drank. Well, that wasn't my experience. You know, I could always drink pretty well. I'm a big guy, and I could drink some pretty substantial quantities, but I could always find a way to get me and my wife home at the end of the night, and that was kind of my task, because my wife's a pretty heavy drinker as well, and that was, to me, that was a very concerning moment, because the conversation that we had on the way home was, you know, I said to my wife, I said, something's wrong, you know, something is wrong. And her comment to me was, oh, you're reading way too much into the situation. That was just a one-off. It's not a big deal. And, you know, I stewed over it for a few days, ended up, didn't get jailed or anything that night, but I ended up in a vacant lot, you know. Both of us passed out in the vacant lot. When I came to, I was able to get every you know, us both home. But you know, that was concerning to me, but it didn't seem to be all that concerning to her. And so in 2019, I went. I thought, you know, these you know, I listened to some of these recovery podcasts, and I wasn't cutting the mustard anymore. So I thought to myself, well, maybe I need to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. So in June of 2019, I ended up going to my first AA meeting. And, you know, my story is, you know, I probably went to 4 different parking lots, sat in the parking lots before I had the courage to walk into my first AA meeting. And once I did walk into that meeting, you know, it was nice. You know, I felt at home. But one of the things that they said early on, you know, that they really bang on in Arizona, as well as a lot of other places, is you need to get a sponsor and you need to work the 12 steps. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to come to meetings, you know, because there was a couple old timers in those meetings who they would just say, you know, just don't drink and go to meetings. You can stay sober. And so for 2 months, I went to 2 to 3 meetings a week, and it seemed to be working. You know, although there was still that underlying, you know, the problem wasn't solved. I could I was still very anxious. I was still not, you know, there's just that underlying feeling that something's wrong, that just something's wrong, you know. And after about 60 days in those meetings, I got cornered by a gentleman that I'd met, and he asked me if I'd had a sponsor yet. And told him no, that I hadn't gotten a sponsor. And he pointed a guy out. He said, go talk to him. He just retired. He works a really good program, and I think he'd be somebody that would really, help you out, take you to the steps. And I said, oh, okay. And I walked over towards that guy. And from the time I left the first conversation to the time I passed that gentleman, I decided I was an alcoholic. And walked past him and walked out the doors, walked home, told my wife, yeah, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. And I'm just going to moderate from now on. And my wife was ecstatic. She was so happy. She was not about Alcoholics Anonymous. She was overjoyed that I was back, that her drinking buddy was back. And so that was in probably August of 2019. And I got sober in the date of my last drink is October 29th of 2020. So for that next year and a few months, that situation in Palm Springs, as we know, this is a progressive disease, and that situation in Palm Springs repeated itself on a few more occasions. But my plan was, you know what, I'll go out, have a few pops, I'll get what I need, and I'll just come home. I'll drink at home. That way, when I black out, I'll be all right. I'll be at home, and I won't have any drama. So and I was pretty much consigned to the fact that this was going to be my life. My wife wasn't interested in sobriety. She was not happy that I'd gone into Alcoholics Anonymous at all. She was very upset. She was still drinking at the time, and so for the next year and a half or so, we just went back to the way things had been, and so October of 2029 came, or October. My last time drinking was fairly unremarkable. Was going deer hunting the next day. Had 6 or 7 beers. Woke up, went hunting, and then about 3 days later, I was in a really remote area of Arizona and didn't have phone service, and then I ended up trying to call my wife on a Sunday morning. And she answers the phone, and she's in jail. She's gotten herself a DUI, and I didn't know, I was stunned because she was the voice of reason in the relationship when it came to drinking and driving. She's and so when I came home, it was I didn't really know what to do at that point, because one of the things about having 2 active drinkers in the home is I didn't know what to do. And she when I got home, she said, I had talked to her about, we'd had these conversations before, and she had said that she was not going to drink anymore. She knew that there was an issue, and that she couldn't drink anymore. And I said, oh, good. Okay. Yeah. You're finally on board. And, she's scared. She was, it was a serious DUI. She was facing 60 to 90 days in jail. It wasn't just it was a serious charge. She blew a pretty high. And, she ended up being able to stay sober for about 5 days. And and I won't really talk any more about that story, but she's still, she's still struggling. And it's kind of an interesting story that my wife gets the DUI, and I'm the one who goes to Alcoholics Anonymous and gets sober. And I could just tell that something had to change. Something had to change. On a Friday night, we had a major disagreement, big fight, and the next morning I found myself in one of those meetings that I'd gone to in 2019, and immediately saw a couple of the guys that I'd saw back then, and they said, "Well, welcome back." You know, it was nice to be back. That Sunday, I had listened to a podcast of the Sober Speak, and there was one gentleman on that podcast that I was particularly drawn to. His name is Gary Kay. Some of you on this meeting are intimately know Gary, and he had just released a new episode on the podcast, and he said that he had been working with people remotely, had been sponsoring some people remotely on Zoom, and I was a member of a Facebook group. I reached out to Gary on a Sunday morning, texted him and said, "Gary, I'm struggling. I want to get sober. I need a sponsor. Will you, would you be interested in helping me?" He replied quickly and said, "Simon, I'd love to talk with you. I have a Zoom group that me and another guy put together. It meets every night at 8 p.m. Texas time. Why don't you jump on that meeting, and we'll set a time to talk on Monday?" And I said, "Okay." And ended up going to the solution group that's based out of East Texas, and a lot of people that are on the meeting tonight are familiar with that group. But what's changed for me is I finally came into Alcoholics Anonymous this last time, and I just had enough. I just had enough to drink, and I wanted something different in my life. I desired something different in my life, and I remember going to that solution group the first few times, and it's a big book based meeting. None of the meetings I'd ever attended were based in the big book. I didn't know what to think about it, but there was people on that meeting that I was immediately drawn to some of the things that they're talking about, because I think I said earlier in the talk that I've always been a spiritual seeker. I've done lots of different things other than the Mormon religion. I've been into meditation and different things, and like I said, I've had some pretty strong spiritual experiences in some of those arenas, but nothing ever stuck. And I just always have felt apart from instead of a part of. From the time I can remember, from when I was a young child, I just felt like, something was wrong with me. Like something was wrong with me. Like other people didn't understand. And I know that's now that I've gone through this work, and I've done a fourth and a fifth step, these aren't uncommon feelings. These aren't uncommon feelings for alcoholics. This is pretty standard stuff for alcoholics, but I didn't know that. I thought that something was just just wrong with me, you know, and what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me, what the steps have done for me, is they have given me a practical approach to spirituality. You know, one of the things that I did not want to do is I did not want to do a fifth step, and I did not want to do a ninth step. And those are huge stumbling blocks in this program. You know, just being in here for a year, you know, I already have experience with people, you know, who just refuse to do the inventory, you know, to share it with somebody, and then to do an amends list and start making amends to people. And I understand that, because I didn't want to do those things either. You know, that's one of the reasons in 2019 I just was not going to do that stuff. I was not going to have a sponsor tell me to do that stuff. There was just no way I was going to do that. And when I came in 2020, I said, let's do it. Let's do it. You know, let's see if something changes. And as I went through that process with my fourth step, and I struggled with my fourth step, but I talked to a couple of my buddies, and, you know, they said, you know, a lot of people look at this fourth step as this big, huge confession, but what we're trying to find out is, why do you do the things you do? You know, what are the causes and conditions that set you up to have resentments? You know, that why are you fearful? You know, why, you know, treat it as a fact-finding mission. You know, let's try to find out what's going on. And one of my buddies said, you know, he put it to me in a way that I really like. He said, what I like to tell people is, I call it the Book of Bastards. I'm sorry for swearing, he says, but he says, what we're trying to do is, who were they, what did they do, and how did it make you feel? And you know, that kind of lightened it up for me, and I was able to, you know, start writing some stuff down. And I was thinking, I don't have that many resentments. And they said, well, how many brothers and sisters do you have? And I said, I'm the oldest of 7. He says, well, there's 6 right there. He said, you have parents? I said, yes. He says, there's 2 right there. He said, you have children? Yes, I have children. There's, how many children you have? 3. There's 3 right there. You married? Yes, I'm married. There's a big one right there. And so I just started going through, and I started writing stuff down. And the thing that was that came out of that was incredible for me is, there were things about people that I loved that I just had no idea. I had no idea how serious of a problem that resentment was in my life. You know, with my kids, I love my kids. You know, I love my kids. I got three kids, and I care about my kids. But as I went through those resentment lessons, I started looking at stuff, and I started writing stuff down. What I started to realize was so much of my relationship with all the people that I love was based on what they could do for me. You know, how my children's behavior reflected on me. Not that their behavior was affecting them or why they were doing the things they did, but, you know, that it made me look bad as a father. You know, and those were hard things to look at. And those were hard things to see down and written down. And then to share that with my sponsor, to you know, to be able to say, yeah, I didn't even realize that, you know, go through that and see my part in things, my part in why, you know, I felt the way I did, and that ultimately, you know, it's not other people who are making me miserable. You know, it's my own attitudes and my own inadequacies, my own character defects that are causing so much of my own problems. And just to be able to, and that gave me some relief, you know, to start to see that about myself. And I went through the steps fairly quickly. I probably was halfway through my ninth step within about 3 months of going through this program. And the first, my sponsor said, he's pretty regimented. He said, what I want you to do is, you know, he started pulling them out of the resentment list, the people I needed to talk to. And he said, the people you need to talk to, that I want you to talk to first are the people who live under your own roof. And so he said, I want you to do 2 a week, and until you get them done. And so I started with my children. I did the lists with I went through those things with my children. And what was amazing to me is that is the child that I thought it was going to be the hardest to go through was actually the easiest. My oldest daughter is mine, and her relationship has always been a little bit strained. And I met my sponsor said, "Who's your easiest?" And I told him that would be my oldest son. And I took him out and made my amends to him. And he had a lot to say, a lot more than I thought he would, you know. And which surprised me. And my youngest son, who I did second, I didn't think he would have a lot to say. He had more to say than I thought. But my daughter, who was the one that I was concerned about as far as my kids, she didn't have anything to say at all. You know, I opened it up and I said, "What's your, you know, I know I've affected you. You know, I'm trying to get sober, this and that. And, you know what? I have some things written down, but I wanted to open the floor to you to, you know, what have I done to hurt you?" And she sat there and thought about it for a few minutes. And said, "I don't really have anything." And thought to myself, you know, I started to go through my list of things. You know, how about that night that I had you, you know, pinned up against the car with my hand around your throat? That's probably a problem, don't you think? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You know, and anyways, the one thing that doing those things with my children, I've always been kind of the authority figure, or thought of myself that way in my home. And the one thing that this program has opened up for me is all my kids are older. My daughter's 23, my oldest son's 21, and my youngest son's 17. So they're, you know, 2 of them are out of my home, and one of them still lives with me. He's not around a lot. He works and does a lot of stuff, but it's put that relationship on a much different plane, you know, and that's because of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's because of listening to people who've been in this program and who've seen these changes change their lives. And one of the curious things about Alcoholics Anonymous that I never understood was, why do people give of their time and expect nothing in return? That was just lost on me. It was lost on me when I walked through these doors, because I could not believe that somebody in East Texas would sit down with me on a weekly basis. I couldn't believe that somebody in South Carolina would call me every day in the first few weeks of my coming back to AA, you know, and that people were reaching out to me, you know, and that they cared. People I didn't know, that I met on a Zoom meeting, cared enough, to reach out to me and call me. And the marvelous thing about going through this process and having that spiritual change in my own life is I understand, I understand why they do those things, because that's why I'm doing this tonight. John called me last night, 22 hours before this meeting started, and said, "Hey, Simon, will you speak tomorrow?" And, I said, I will. I'll speak tomorrow, because this program has changed my life. This program has changed my life. It's opened up it's opened up to me what I've always been looking for. And all I've really been looking for is a relationship with something bigger than myself, and a way to actually love people, to open myself enough and be vulnerable enough to share my experiences with other people and try to make an effective change in their life. And I didn't even realize that before I came into Burst Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't realize that that the secret of this program is people helping other people. People help you, and then you help somebody else. And this is, it's what a wonderful thing. Gary, my sponsor, says, a lot of religions, spiritual traditions, and he got this from somebody in his home group in West Texas. He said, a lot of spirits, Alcoholics Anonymous isn't really all that different than a lot of other spiritual traditions, but God had compassion on the alcoholic, and he numbered the steps, and that's how I look at it today. I found this thing. I'm grateful for it. My life has changed, and I still have a lot of challenges. My wife is not really too interested in sobriety still at this point, and it's put our life on different trajectories over the past year, and I don't know how that's going to work out. And I love her. I had a conversation with her tonight. She's faced some more consequences in her, recently, and but I love her, and I keep my mouth off her. I was told to keep my mouth off of people, and that her journey is her journey, and she's going to have to do this thing or not do this thing. It's just because I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and I love Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't mean everybody else is going to love Alcoholics Anonymous. It doesn't mean that at all. But what it's allowed me to do is it's allowed me to have compassion. I love alcoholics. I love sober alcoholics, and I love alcoholics who are still suffering. And and that's the wonderful thing about this program is it's there if she wants it, and if she doesn't want it, it's her choice. And that's kind of the way it is with all of us. One of the things, and I'll kind of end with this, is somebody said this in a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I really liked it. It said, I'd always heard that, the saying, Alcoholics Anonymous is not for those who need it, but it's for those who want it. And this gentleman said, no, that's not really true. Alcoholics Anonymous isn't for those who need it, nor those who want it. It's for those who do it. And that's been my experience. Thank you.